Yep. Yep.
Can you remind me your name first?
Maggie.
Maggie. For you, Maggie, I'm gonna right away dive into one of these
Okay.
before getting on something else. Okay. So, if you were given the choice between floating alone in space or floating alone at sea, which one would you choose? And
Sea. I can't swim, but sea would be it.
why?
I find it very calming.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love the water,
Yeah.
though I can't swim.
What do you? Why do you think the water is calming? Just like.
I spent a lot of time with my grandparents when I was young and in Nova Scotia. And my grandfather could build anything. And every couple of years, he would build a cabin cruiser. And he'd use it for a year, and then he'd sell it and start all over again. And that I found very calming. I love to be out on the water.
Interesting. Have you been? How long have you been in Vernon? Did you grow up on the?
No,
There's-
I was born in Halifax,
Okay.
grew up in Ontario, and we moved here from Ontario, I guess going on 4 years.
How do you like Vernon compared to Ontario?
Love it. Absolutely love it. It's the only place in the world where every day you get to see something different. You see the mist, you see we have wild horses where we live, and you get to see those, and cows, and it's just a beautiful place.
Interesting. The weather as well is probably
yeah.
better.
Yeah. Although our first year we lived through the fires.
Yeah.
We were evacuated twice, and that was pretty scary.
Right.
We move here, and then we get evacuated by fires. Sad. Yeah.
Right after moving here.
Yeah.
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 Wow. But you stayed.
Yes.
So the fire didn't.
Didn't scare us. No.
Are you working here yourself?
I'm a
right?
volunteer
You're
here.
a volunteer here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why?
Why? I have been a volunteer pretty much all of my life, since I think I was 14. I had my first volunteer position. I've had other jobs, but I do enjoy volunteering, and I've been with seniors for a lot of years in that area, and I worked at a senior center. And one of my biggest volunteer that I was the happiest at was hospice. Yeah.
Did you? So you said you had a few different career as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, in what main career were you?
One job that I had, I was the buyer for across Canada for all of the incentives that we used in the Heart and Stroke Foundation. When I was 18, I was the manager of an art gallery, the largest art gallery east of Montreal, and that was in Halifax. Yeah, I'm much like Pat, you know, moved from one experience to another, and it didn't please my father either. He spent 30 years working on the line in General Motors, and didn't I appreciate all the stuff that one company could give me? Yeah.
Yeah. How? Why do you think parents would want their kids to stay in one same thing?
Oh, I know benefits. That was the biggest thing, the
Really?
benefits. You're
Interesting.
getting benefits there, and that's the...
Yeah.
I had a brother-in-law that had a job, was hired by Bell Canada, and he quit it to be a musician. And he provided a really good life as a musician. But my father was angry at him too. How dare he leave a job that gave him benefits?
Yeah, that's interesting. What did you do you think the biggest things you've learned by volunteering at such a young age? What did your volunteering experience, and especially starting this as a young age, like what kind of value do you think you gained out of that?
It was a happiness and a feeling of helping. Helping is a big issue still. If you can help somebody, then that gave you pleasure from doing it.
Yeah. So,
Although the first job that I volunteered for scared the daylights out of me.
oh, what was that?
It was at a seniors' long-term care facility. And what they had on all people that were able to walk and get around were on one level. The people that couldn't, and people with dementia, though we didn't call it then, were on an upper floor. And it frightened the daylights out of me.
Oh, yeah.
And I went home because everybody thought I was their granddaughter or son or a daughter, rather. And they didn't want you to leave. Now, many years later, I was now a volunteer at that long-term care facility, but I was there for pastoral care. And when I thought about it, here I was at 14, and now I'm at 65, and at the same place. Yeah, it was good.
Interesting. What was one of the biggest challenge you've had in your life?
In life,
Yeah.
I have a son who at 17 was burned in a house fire. That was the biggest challenge of my life.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
What are things that have helped you keep going through this?
What are things that helped me through
Yeah.
something like that?
Yeah.
Basically, I'm an optimistic person, right? And every day you wake up saying, this could be a good day. And these things happen to people. And as long as you can get up every day and say, okay, it's a good day, and it is a good day. No matter what, it's a good day. Yeah.
Thank you. If you could say, well, I feel like this was, if you could say one thing to the world, what would it be?
To the world, other than, we are all connected. Fighting, this world is gone crazy. And you can understand why people are anxious and scared and whatever. We are all connected. That's what I would say. It doesn't matter, like Pat said, it doesn't matter what your religion is, what your race is. I actually really enjoyed delving into customs of other cultures. And I use that very well. But yeah, what is going on? Here we are in Canada, and we're pretty isolated here. We really are. We lead a good life, most people do. And you look at some of the footage that's coming out, like where on earth does somebody get the idea that you want to be a terrorist. I understand mental health issues, and that you can't do a lot with if somebody doesn't want to go for help. But yeah, the world's in a sad place. We are all connected. We are all one.
Yeah.
Really, our energy is all one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think we can help future generation realizing this?
I'm hoping that we get a lot more spiritual, right? But when I think, I just turned 72, and when I think about what I want to be a kid starting out in this world, it's going to be really hard. And it's going to be hard. Our whole culture is going to change when all of us seniors are no longer here. Because the next generation are not a generation of volunteers. They're a generation of what's in it for me, right? So things are going to change.
Yeah.
You can see that. And if you don't have pensions, then their life is going to be a really tough one when they go to retire like us.
Yeah. I will remind them.
Pardon?
I will remind them.
Okay, you do that.
I'm just gonna come hug you and we're good. Can you remind me your name?
My name is John.
John?
Yeah.
How long it's been that you're in Vernon?
I've been in Vernon 86 years.
Wow.
My mom and dad came here. My dad came to Canada in about 1924. And he got off at the ship back east. And he said to the people there, he says, so where do we get work? And it was pretty quiet in Canada in the days. Oh, he says to them, you better head for the prairies and maybe you can find something there. So there was 3 of them together. So they found the first boxcar, heading west, rolled themselves up in the paper, and away they went across Canada. He got as far as Saskatchewan, and the farmers were just thrashing then. So they grabbed all 3 of them, and they went and they thrashed for the fall in Saskatchewan. And then when they were finished thrashing, they said, what's next? And well, the only place you could probably find work now is you go right to Vancouver and shovel this grain into the ship. So back into the boxcar they went again, and they went to Vancouver. I don't know how many days it took them and how many shiftings they had to before they made it, but they got there, and they shoveled grain most of the winter, and in between they're looking for something to do. So there's work in the caribou to feed horses and bale hay. So they went up there, they went to Soda Creek, and they baled hay all winter and put them in the boxcars and shipped them to Vancouver to feed the animals down there. But all along as he was doing this, he was always thinking he'd like to be the same as in Czechoslovakia, where they have everything, grain and mixed farms. And so then when he was talking with different people, they said, well, the only place you're going to find that is the Okanagan Valley. So they came as far as Kamloops, and then there was work at the sawmill at Monty Lake. So he started there working in the sawmill, and he worked there for a year or 2. And in between, they got together and got a bus ticket and came to Vernon, and they came down what's called the old Kamloops Road now. And at that time, the real estate guy said there was a place for sale, and they explained to where to go. So they went to where 27th Street was on 43rd Avenue, and the place that they were looking at was where the Village Green Hotel is now. There was a 20-acre block there, and they were going to divide it between the three of them. Well, they walked for the day, half the day, and it was so mucky they never even got back to where the hotel is. So they went back to Kamloops, and they said to the real estate guy there that that piece of ground that you tried to sell me, you can't even walk over there. It's like a mud hole. So he says, you better give me my money back. And the guy says there, well, I can't give you no money back because we spent it on advertising. But he says, if you find something different, we'll get a hold of you. So it wasn't long after that, there's a piece on Cal Lake Road. So they came again, and then he found a 15-acre piece of ground there. And then somewhere in the late 20s, he bought that, and that was the beginnings. And my mother was back in Slovakia, and the reason he came here to begin with was because he'd built a new house in Slovakia, and money was tight there, and it wasn't going so good. And everybody says, well, go to Canada, that's where the gold mine is, and that's what they did. So anyways, he got that piece of ground, and then he started, well, there's nothing to work in Vernon, but he had a place to sleep at least. So then they went and he worked out in Sugar Lake for a year and a half or two for Siglets. And they shipped all the lumber and ties and everything that they had. And they hadn't got paid, so they wanted to get paid for the work in the year and a half.
Oh, wow.
And Siglet says, well, you could have all the lumber that's left here if you want to take it to Vernon. So between the three of them, they hooked up 2 horses. They each had a horse by that time. Hooked the horse up in a wagon. It took one day to get to Sugar Lake. Loaded up lumber. The next day they came back to Vernon and did that for a number of days till they each had lumber where they could start finishing off. And then he started build a little house there. And in between, my mother was in Slovakia looking after the 2 older kids that were born there. And then finally he sent a letter back. He had a job. There was a sawmill where the Vernon, what do you call it, mall is on about Polson Park Mall. That was a sawmill, and he got a job there. So then he settled into the house, and he said for Mom to come to Canada. So by the time she got packed up to come, it was a year and a half later, and she'd come here, and all he had was a Toporchak shack to live in. And in Slovakia, she had a house. She couldn't believe it, but then there was no money left to go back to Slovakia, so the 2 of them settled in there, and that's where it started.
Nice.
And then a few years later, my older sister to me, but she was the youngest girl. There was 2 more kids came from Slovakia, and then a year and a half later, I came along, and that's where we grew up on.
So you grew up in Vernon.
I was in Vernon for the whole time. I left in the 50s. I left and went to school to Edmonton for a year to mechanic school. And my older brother and sister and the older sister had been going to university. And I said, well, I think I'm just going to farm when I finish. And they said, no, you got to do something. So that's why I went to Edmonton to school for a year. And then I come back here. I got a job, and at that time, they were putting in the power line from Watchan to Vernon, and I was working for a service station, selling gas and fixing cars, and then we got onto that, and they were fixing up the pulleys and the different things that broke down on the field, and the what do you call it, supervisor would bring all this stuff in the back of his car here to the service station, unload it, and he says, I'll pick it up Monday morning at 5 o'clock. So our weekends were spent getting that fixed up. And the rest of the time, then we worked in a service station. And the service station sold gas, and we did work in the back. Well, before you went to serve gas, you were supposed to clean your hands up because you left stains on the car. So I said to the boss, I says, well, I says, this doesn't work. Either we serve gas or we work. Well, I haven't got enough work for 2 people. So I says, well, then I guess I'll see what I can find. And I started to work for a dealer, sold Massey Ferguson equipment. And that's where I started in his shop. And then between, my dad rolled the tractor over, so he couldn't work no more. So then I started to run the farm with my mother and work out. And in between, anything that I made, I bought equipment because we used to work with horses all the time. Well, time was getting on. We used to haul hay. We had a piece of ground on the old Kamloops Road. We'd leave in the morning with the horses, go up there, load the hay on the wagon, and then take it down to Cal Lake Road and put it in the barn, because that's where we fed the cattle in the wintertime. In the summertime, they were on pasture at Kamloops Road. In the fall, we'd open the gate, and the cows, they'd go home on their own right through town to the other farm. We never had to chase them. They went through Polson Park and down the railroad tracks home. They knew their way after a couple of years. And I just stayed here. Then I found a girlfriend in town and started the deal. And she was 19, and her dad wouldn't let us get married because I'm just a farmer. And we courted for a while, and finally then her dad allowed us when she turned 21 to get married. By this time, she'd gone to nurses training in Vancouver. So I used to go down to see her there for the year. And then she decided, well, it's better to be closer than this long distance courting. So she went to work for the Bank of Montreal. And she worked there till we got married, and then we both started a farm. We had a small farm. We grew cattle, sheep, pigs, chickens, ducks. And we used to butcher all the animals when they got big and sold the meat to town until finally in 1972, there was a place for sale where we still own north of Vernon. And we started a farm then full time. We started with 300 acres. And 10 years later, we bought another 200. So we ended up with 500 and some acres.
Wow.
And that was our lifeline from 72 till, trying to think now. Well, we were 45 years on there. And then we came into Vernon. And we live next door now at the Catherine Gardens. And we enjoy it. And in between, while I was farming and courting and growing up, the kids were growing up, I had become a member of the Knights of Columbus. And with the Knights of Columbus, in my time, from 1960, I joined them to, what's it now, 2000, and I guess 2000, we built the Schubert Center.
Oh, wow.
And then we, with government help, and we built Gateby, and I was on the board. It was a Okanagan Commemorative Pioneer Cultural Society, because the Knights can't own nothing. So we formed that society, and then we managed and built the Gateby. I was president of that for 5 years. And then the government put the pressure on us because they didn't want private people doing care. So then we turned that over to government. And in between, we subdivided the land off from that was extra that we put together for Gateby. And we built Columbus Court 1. And then we built Columbus Court 2. That was all on OCPCS. And I was chairman of that. And then I decided to take it a little easier and was idle for a while. And then we got together through the Schubert Center and the Knights and got to build Columbus Court.
Nice.
So that's my life.
Yeah.
And in between, I was an alderman in Spell-a-Machine for 6 years and on the Larkin Water Board for 10 years. and in between we farmed. And we built up the farm, and finally in that year then everything was ours, and so we came to town and took life easy and came back to Schubert Center.
Nice. Wow, that's
It's a long history, but that's Vernon. But like I say, I can remember Vernon, we used to go through town on 30th Avenue because that was the only thing that you came down to Kamloops Road, went 30th Avenue, and then went out to Kalmuck Lake Road. And we traveled that for a few years with a horse and buggy.
Yeah.
Then we had a tractor, and my dad never drove, so he used to take us with a tractor because he didn't need a license, and we traveled around and kept going up and up.
Nice.
And the good Lord was always on our side.
Yeah.
So there we are.
What after all, if you look at your entire story like this, what do you think is the most important values you learned and gained out of this whole story of yours?
Well, there was an old timer that I met when I was a young fella, and he said to me, Canada is full of opportunities, but you have to work at it. And I always lived by them words.
Beautiful.
So there we are.
Amazing.
And the good Lord looked after me. I had good health.
Yeah.
But in the last, I guess 25 years, it's a little tougher. And
How
we're
old are you now?
86. Going to be 87 here shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Vernon's been good to me, and we got to give it back to make it a community.
Yeah.
So there we are.
Beautiful.
And if you're going to say about the community the world is now, I don't know what it is. It's got mixed up. We had homelessness. I can remember a 5-year-old walking down the railroad tracks, and Polson Park used to have a few people in there, older people that used to live in cardboard tents in there. So we've had them, but nowadays I don't know what happened because we got them all over. And something's going to have to change, but I don't know what.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you for sharing
Okay.
your story. I'll close that.
Okay. You're welcome.